Last summer, I drove down to Kentucky. It was about a 14-hour drive, I believe, and I stopped at halfway. It was beautiful. I set up a campsite, went and had this beautiful mountain overlook for a sunrise. It was really good. But when I got to Kentucky, I got to Our Lady of Gethsemane, which is a Cistercian monastery. The Cistercians were an order that, well, their roots actually go back to a monk that lived in France in a town called Chaffee. But every single day, as I would stay at this monastery for about a week, there were 7 or 8 different services that would happen in the sanctuary. And all of us that were there as retreatants, people just staying there, we were invited to go into the sanctuary, and then we would watch the rows of monks as they would do their services. And actually, it was quite profound. While I was there, though, we weren't really allowed to talk. It was actually a silent retreat center. The Cistercians are known for utilizing silence so that we could have more time to contemplate and to live deeply, not just think deeply. Well, while I was there, I started to notice something. It was unique, because every time I went into the sanctuary, the room just felt different. You know what I mean? It just felt holier, and there was the sound of these monks singing just kind of echoed down this long chamber. And they didn't set up in the front or the back that way, facing that way. They actually lined the sides of the hall and then sung this way. So it would echo back and forth even more, and it amplified how many voices there were. It was almost mesmerizing. And their services were really short, maybe 12, 15 minutes at most. That's it. But I started to notice that whenever we were in service, they would actually light some incense. And this is one of them that I had bought from the good old Amazon. But over here are these little sticks that you can burn. Let's do 2 of them, all right? You see, the Hebrew scriptures have got a number of references towards our prayers being like smoke or incense rising up to God. It also happens in the book of Revelation, so it's actually in Old as well as the New Testament. But there's something deep when you start fixating or aligning your spirituality not just with words, but with sounds. Not just with books, but also with songs. And so I bought these last fall, actually earlier this year, in reality, in 2020. Now you do that, and then it smokes like this. Let me put it back in. There's little holes, these little grooves that help it. And let's just keep these right here to remind us. I'm going to light it one more time. Just to remind us that our prayers are supposed to be like incense lifting up to God. Isn't that cool? Now, we have something really unique when we read the scriptures. Yes, there's references towards prayer being like smoke or incense rising up to God. It's this pleasant aroma, a beautiful smell. And I'll be honest, right now it smells herbal. It smells, well, to me, it actually reminds me of Kentucky. But when I said that it's important not just to focus our faith on books, but also on songs, I mean that for the purpose of the Psalms, Psalm. Psalm is just another word for song, and in Hebrew, the book of Psalms is called the Tehillim. I-M usually means it's a plural word, the Tehillim. When we read the scriptures, sometimes we like to read the Bible in such a way as to try to figure out what God thinks about this topic, and then this one, and this one. And then we try to cut up certain Bible books in order to kind of take the verses about this and the verses about this, and we line them all up, and we chop the Bible up so much that we kind of forget that it's supposed to be messy in a different way. When I read the Psalms, it does something really profound. For me, personally, it does this. It affirms the whole range of the human experience. Because in Christian circles, we tend to have this mindset that you're supposed to come to church clean. I know you've probably heard that, but you can just come as you are. But we say that, and I'm not sure if we always mean that, because we all have this tendency to sometimes censor our emotions. Sometimes we stifle them, or we hold them back, or we deny them. A lot of us have got anger, or even further, rage, some sadness. Some of us really have got some grievances with God or with other people. Some of us really need to lament. Some of us are really good at joy, being thankful. Some of us need to shake our fists at the heavens and remind God that it feels like you forgot me. Well, all the things that you could potentially say, no matter what emotion behind it, is like incense lifting up to God, even the ugly emotions. Now, for you teenagers, I think it's really important that we have the book of Psalms. Because again, Psalms affirms the whole of the human experience, the whole range of emotions. And if you were to read the book of Psalms all the way through, I think you might be embarrassed because there are some really awkward passages in there. It almost seems sometimes as though the person praying that psalm is maybe being disrespectful to God. And there are even instances in the book of Psalms where they seem to say things that they shouldn't be saying if they're a faithful person, you know? Sometimes the Psalms have got references towards some really bad violence. There's references towards hatred too. And if you ever take the time to read Psalm 88, it's known as the saddest psalm of all 150 of them. I know of someone that once went to a hospital to visit a friend who was dealing with cancer and showed them Psalm 88, the saddest psalm of all. And when it finishes, the very last line says, I believe it ends with, "Darkness is my only friend." That's it. And the person that was being shown that, the man with cancer at the time, said, "This is my psalm." The Psalms are powerful. Yes, because they affirm the range of human experience, but they're also powerful because they're messy. And it's right in the center of the Hebrew Scriptures. Your life is allowed to be messy. My life is allowed to be messy because the Hebrew Scriptures already told us that even a messy life can still be a holy life. So for you guys that are kind of dealing with strong emotions for maybe the first time in your life, maybe you've been let down by friends or betrayed by friends, maybe you've found yourself incredibly frustrated at teachers or your parents, maybe you've dealt with anger and shame and fury and rage and happiness and joy and thankfulness and surprise, all of these things. The book of Psalms tells me that the whole range is holy. And so, one thought, if we ever deny the range of human experience to ourselves, we might be denying the range of holy experiences that we could get out of this life. Because yes, of course, life has got its ups and downs, its mountains and its valleys, but God made all of it. And so why not lean into it? So how do we finish this? Well, maybe it means that we learn to accept everything that we're feeling on the inside because God already does. Maybe it means we learn to verbalize and say out loud all the things we're experiencing on the inside. Maybe it means we write really exquisite poetry. Go ahead, do it. Even if it's bad, it's still good because it's honest, right? The only prerequisite for a good prayer is that it's honest. It doesn't have to have sophisticated lingo. It doesn't have to have beautiful words all the time. It doesn't even have to make sense. But when I read that the early church devoted themselves to prayer, my understanding is that they devoted themselves to being honest with all the stuff that's happening inside them, and let all the stuff that's happening inside them rise like incense for God. So this week, I pray that you pray yourself with honesty. Bring your whole self to God. Bring your whole self to yourself. Maybe you don't even want to admit some of the mess you got on the inside, but I promise you, God even validates us when we bring our messy selves. So may you do that. This past week, I had a conversation about how God is all-knowing. And sometimes we think that if other people were all-knowing about us, then that person over there probably wouldn't be all-loving. But here's the beautiful thing. God is somehow both all-knowing and all-loving. He knows the chaos and all the mess inside of us. So who are we trying to hide it from? Maybe God knows our prayers are supposed to help us get certain things off of our chest. So be blessed this week. May you find silence at some point, and may you sit in it. May you let it teach you how to be honest with what's going on inside of you. And I honestly hope that the book of Psalms reminds you as much as it does me that God loves us even if we're messy. Be well.